friends, Rebecca here, the Dragon Librarian from Farmington Community Library, and Cal and I are here to talk to you about a couple fantastic books. One is considered a classic, and one is been out for a couple years and will probably be called a classic down the road, I'm sure. Anyway, they're both books that I absolutely love, and the reason we're talking about them today is because this is the third and last week of us discussing books that were made into movies and or TV shows and how they compare. So this first one I want to talk about is the one that's a little bit newer, and that is called Wonder. And I guarantee if you haven't read this book, you probably recognize the cover, right? It's a super iconic cover. It's been out for a few years, and I think even if you haven't read it, it's very recognizable, right? So if you haven't read this book, this is about a young boy named Augie who has a facial deformity. And because of this, he's been homeschooled. He's never been to public school before. But that's all about to change in the beginning of this book. He's starting fifth grade and he's going to a school, like a public school, for the very first time. That sounds so overwhelming and scary, right? Even just by itself. When you move or when you've been homeschooled and you're starting school for the first time, it's scary. Or even I remember going to school when I was younger, and even though I was never homeschooled and I went to the same school with the same kids every year, starting the beginning of the year is always a little bit freaky. It's just a little scary, it's a little nerve-wracking. Well, I can't even imagine what Augie would be feeling having to go through something like this when he doesn't look like everybody else and he's worried about people picking on him. So this book is, if I could sum it up what it's about in one word, it would be kindness. This book has to do with kindness towards yourself, kindness towards others, accepting people for who they are no matter what they may look like. This book is just so full of heart. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. Absolutely love it. And it was very recently made into a movie. And this was a basically all-star cast. So it's got Owen Wilson there playing the dad. We've got Julia Roberts here playing the mom. It's a just fantastic film. So, and then we've got Augie there in the middle. So I really liked this movie. I think it did a really good job. I think also that it was one of the very few movies that I liked probably just as much as the book. I can't say that I liked it more than the book, probably because I read the book first and just had a lot of love for it in my heart going into this movie. So I already kind of had like a first place spot for this book before I saw the film. But the film does a really remarkable job. It's a really great story about friendship, about fitting in, about, like I said, kindness and love. It's a really great story. It's a really great family movie. So if you're looking for a movie to watch with your family night, this is a great one. And then you can read the book as well if you haven't already and talk about that. Everybody should read this book. That's my opinion, because it has something for everyone, even as an adult. I didn't read this as a kid. Like I said, it's not that old of a book. I read it as an adult, and it just meant so much to me. I think everybody can get something out of this book. Wonder by R.J. Palacio. The next book is a book that, like I said, is considered a classic. It's a book that I grew up loving, absolutely loving with all my heart, and that is called Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. Anne of Green Gables. Now, this is actually the first book in a series. The Anne of Green Gables is actually a series of books that follows Anne as she gets older or as she grows up and makes her place in the world. But this is I think, the best one, the most iconic book in the series, because it's about her when she is just a young girl. And she is an orphan, unfortunately. And she's taken in by Marilla, who is this old woman who is a little bit cranky and cantankerous. Her brother absolutely falls completely in love with Anne and her personality, because Anne is very unique. She is spunky, she is fiery, she is just this big ball of imagination, and just, she's an amazing child. And Marilla is more just like down to earth, grounded, things are what they are, and that's the end of it. Anne loves to tell stories, and she's always caught up in imagining things. Her imagination is just as big and as endless as the sky. So it's really fun to watch Anne first get under Marilla's skin, right? She kind of gets on her nerves, and Marilla does not know what to do with this girl. But then watching her and absolutely just, and her brother absolutely fall in completely in love with this girl. And it's also a really beautiful book, obviously about family and found family, right? Not just the family you're born with, but the family that you make. But it's also a beautiful, beautiful story about Green Gables itself, which is an amazing place. It's described so beautifully. I still carry some of the remembrances of that place, even just as an adult. So this is just a really fun, beautiful story. Absolutely loved it. And it was made actually into two different adaptations. So this is the one I grew up with, and it was actually a movie. And I won't lie, every time I read this book now, I read it growing up, but now every time I go back to it now, this is who I picture when I picture Anne. This was made in the, I believe, late 80s, early 90s, which is when I saw it. It's a really great adaptation of this book. The actors are fantastic. Anne, like I said, the girl who plays Anne just does a wonderful job. And Green Gables itself is a beautiful place to see. Now, that being said, there's also a newer version of Anne of Green Gables, which is called Anne with an E. And this show is actually on Netflix. And I haven't watched all of it. But I did watch the first 3 or 4 episodes and really liked it a lot. I thought they did a great job. For me, the original movie version is what I think of when I think of Anne. And like I said, that's just because I think that's how I originally came to it. But this girl who plays Anne does a wonderful job, and the show is really good, and it's really enjoyable. So this might be another thing you want to watch the show, read the book, or vice versa. Read it, and then watch it, and then talk about what you liked and what you didn't like. I would say I definitely, in this case, even with the show and the movie, the book surpasses it for me. And like I said, this is a childhood favorite of mine, which is probably why. But absolutely love it. Anne of Green Gables. Definitely read at least the first book in the series. Well, that's what we have for you guys today. I hope that these sound really fun and you want to check out the books and the movies and the TV shows. If so, feel free to get them at the Farmington Community Library. And I hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching, friends, and have a wonderful rest of the day.